That's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have everyone. The meeting will come to order. We are now moving on to the next item, item 4, which is discussion and possible action on the proposals of the professional consultants to provide the economic development analysis and recommendations. If there is a motion, then there would be public comment at that time. So, board members, we can open this for discussion or whatever action that you wish to take.
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Cook?
Mr. Mayor, at this time, I would like to thank both of the groups that have come to us to make the presentation. I think they both speak highly of their professions and their professionalism. And I appreciate them taking the time out of their schedules to be here, also to answer the candidate questions that we've asked of them. I think that, again, I appreciate them being here and taking the time to further the discussion along so that we might get to that point to make a decision as to which direction we wish to go. At this time, I would make a motion that JEDO select Garner Economics and authorize Mayor Wilgas to negotiate a contract with that organization and bring the contract back to this body for approval. And that is a motion.
Okay, we have a motion before us. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Commissioner Archer.
Yeah, and
now-
just
and
to
now
open this up
discussion.
for
Now-
discussion.
Now we have a motion on the table for discussion.
I personally, and I appreciate the consultants coming also. Personally, I would favor Avalanche. It is very close. But I would favor Avalanche, and I'll tell you why. Number one, they have a base of knowledge of our community. They've been here recently, and they've done a good job. Dean had good expertise with site selectors, and I think that's important. I was most impressed with their work with Charleston, South Carolina, doing over 30 projects with Charleston. And Charleston, for those who don't know, is one of the premier cities in the world. It has been recognized by Forbes magazine as the best managed city in the world. And people go there, and businesses go there because of their quality of life. And I am very impressed with that credential. And finally, I like Avalanche's energy enthusiasm for our community. I like Garner. They're well-known, very professional, and it's very close. But I would make a substitute motion that we engage with Avalanche Consulting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, there is a substitute motion. And there is a second by Commissioner Bueller. Now we have a open for discussion in that direction. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it. I was just, Councilwoman De Lisa.
I don't know if this is, no, I was moving the mic. Well, for me, it's extremely difficult because I'm trying to sit back and sift through all of the information. We have years of experience, there's a difference there. And both of them had two key things that I wish that I could just merge them both into one. One of them had newness, freshness, out-of-the-box ideas, a high impact and interest in engaging the community and the populace. See, to me, that's really important. Understanding that, I mean, just yesterday at the council meeting, we had a conversation in which we're discussing the echo that we're having of the economic recession in our community and the effect that this is having on poverty. Just yesterday, we had this topic. one of the people mentioned poverty and how it's affecting our economic development. The other group didn't even mention it. However, on that same breath, the other group made a very strong affirming statement with regards to the very poor job that our organization has been doing. For whatever reason, whether it's changes, whether it's new leadership, whatever it is. One of them was very poignant with regards to working on bettering our relationships with the community and being very strategic with how we work with that. But there was, the groups were very marked, one of them towards being creative and thinking outside of the box and, you know, having that energy to bring the community together. The other was very focused on primary employment, and it just sounded a lot like what we have right now. So I'm divided in between, you know, yes, we need to work together as an organization, but do we want to keep on doing the same thing? So I'm just eager to hear what everybody else has to say.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Keller?
Well, I will make it a much shortened version of what I commented on last time when we'd read the proposals. I really appreciate the expertise and the experience of both bidders, but I really feel that when I go back through the resolution that we all spent some time on crafting in terms of what we were looking for, not for somebody to hire to deliver our economic development program, but for someone to help us listen to our community and develop a strategy and look at a new broad brush. Even if we end up narrowing it back in, help us look at all those best practices. I felt that Avalanche really spoke to us about that in terms of the engagement and the planning. So I would support the motion. Thank you.
All right. Other comments? Seeing none at this point, we will then go to the public comment before we take any votes. So we hear from those who signed up to speak. The first person is Michael Schultes. Mr. Schultes? Yeah. And just for the speakers, that we use a timer and that you are aware of, and it's 4 minutes. And so we have a number of speakers, so we hope that you can keep
More than enough time.
everyone keep their remarks in approximately that time frame. Thank you.
More than enough time.
Thank you.
Members, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. As far as the presentations that we just heard, she hits it on the head. Unfortunately, I am not as savvy as what you folks are in dealing with this, but there was a lot of fluff generated by both sides. The methodology and presentation of the second group, I felt, was more genuine. They have more inclination to develop it from the base and move up with it. Another big employer like Target or Goodyear or any of those, it's all well and good, but they're very dictatorial, and they push sometimes ideas that aren't applicable to this area of the country. That's really all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comments. The next speaker is Joseph Ledbetter.
Governing body, I listened very carefully to both presentations, but before I go into that, I did meet with the Citizens for Accountability in Government, and we were very concerned about any consultant that's worked for Go Topeka within the last 5 years, viewing the changes at Go Topeka probably necessary, and we are concerned about people having potential bias that might hang on to those institutionalized ideas that Go Topeka has had. And I'm not going to go into what those are, but what I appreciated in the second presentation was a genuineness of trust building and saying that very pointedly. And I've never met the man before. I did see Avalanche here earlier this year. It struck me as a man that, a group that people would trust, who would be open with him, and that he would be open with you all about problems of trust building, which, sorry, you have it. That's why there's a group that's been formed, because we want accountability in our government money. And so I'm not going to slam either side. I was particularly impressed by the second group's employment charts, and the fact that he said he had watched our meetings. I didn't hear that from the other group. That struck me as a person that's going to be engaged and is actually interested in helping us solve problems. Now, I will say this. We very often don't want advice as people, and I see it in my profession. I have clients that sometimes do not want what I consider really good advice, and that's their choice. But in this community, we are all in this. And if we don't trust the process, you've got a problem from right out the starting gate. And I would like to see somebody come in here that wants to build that trust and is willing to open the listenership. And he said he wanted a listening meeting. I heard that. We want the consultant to interview not only our group, Citizens for Accountability in Government, because we have a lot of expertise. We've got a lot of sharp small business people and entrepreneurs in our group. We've got several lawyers, and I think that we are worth listening to. I'd like the League of Women Voters engaged. They've been talking about they want transparency for the last 2 to 3 years. Other small business groups that are not tied to the Chamber of Commerce. The NIAs should be engaged, where the poverty is growing the fastest. And I certainly work with one of them. I'm more than willing to work with others, but I've only got so much time. And some of it you have to make a living. But I would tell you, never turn away from somebody that's offering strong advice. It may just save you, and it may make you look very good in a couple years if you take somebody like that. But I don't have a vote on this matter, and neither does my group. But we do want the community at large engaged, not just a few selective groups in this process, because it will fail if that's all we get. Because it will not be trusted. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next speaker is Tim Jurowski.
Praise God. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Tim Zarowski. It's really not that difficult to say. It's only 3 syllables. I'm a business owner, a property owner, and a taxpayer, and a shareholder in Kansas, in Shawnee County, the city of Topeka. While I believe the members of the City Council, Shawnee County, and those who are voting members of the Joint Economic Development Organization are at core good people, I also believe that JEDO has, as it is currently structured, is not only inefficient, but also ineffective. JEDO itself is problematic. There appears to be little to no leadership. There appears to be little or no direction. There appears to be no clear objective. And to my knowledge, JEDO doesn't even have a mission statement. These are some core problems. The members which comprise JEDO have jobs, duties, responsibilities, and lives. They, you, do not have the resources available to you to do justice to that which is necessary to properly make decisions based on intellectual discovery. Simply put, you do not have the time needed for debate and for the subsequent thought process to occur to make rational decisions. So this organization, which has limited resources, limited leadership, and limited direction, wants to hire a company to tell them what this community lacks or needs or why it is not growing. If the firm that you hire for this current RFP is worth its own weight, it should find that JEDO itself is problematic and needs an overhaul. But that may not be within the realm of the request. JEDO is the acronym for Joint Economic Development Organization. Economic development deserves, demands more than what this structured body is capable of producing. If you proceed to hire, your contractual instructions need to be crystal clear. If you do hire one of these firms, please give them clear, concise instructions so they know what they are supposed to accomplish. If you are vague, their work will be vague, and the results will also be vague and worthless, except that you will have paid them $80,000+ for vague, worthless data. It is my opinion that until JEDO gets one vendor under control, JEDO should not be hiring another and spending my tax dollars. I strongly encourage this body to table this current RFP until such time as JEDO resolves other issues associated with its resolve. That said, if you do hire one, the second presentation, the second company, really did a great job in, I believe, in doing his homework, in researching this community, and talking to people, even looked at some of our videos that TV5 put on. And Avalanche seems to have all the buzzwords, but Gardner had the details, and he had the data, and he had the stats, and I think he's bold enough to see this thing to completion and help. My name is Tim Zarowski.
Thank you, Mr. Jarosky. Thank you for your comments. The next person to speak is Carol Marple.
I first want to say that I agree with everything that the last three speakers said. They said it much better than I can say it. I do have a few comments to make. I thought that the second presenter gave an excellent presentation. He addressed a great many concerns that I have, and I think he would do a good job for our community. But I am still very skeptical about spending more taxpayer money on hiring an economic development consultant. I don't see really how anything will be accomplished. In July of 2012, the private dollars of Go Topeka, the board hired, and I'm going to mess her name up, Dr. Morfessis, Morfessis, of IO Incorporated, to review Go Topeka. One of her recommendations, and I quote, was to establish a more clearly delineation between the Greater Topeka Chamber of Commerce and Go Topeka Economic Partnership. Now, a paid consultant made this suggestion. The unpaid citizens of Shawnee County have been asking for this also, and they are still being ignored, as was the paid consultants. The citizens of this community know what is wrong, but they are not listened to. So why waste money for another consultant if you're not going to listen to them? And we want to talk about money. I'd like to ask this question here. I've been reading past JEDO minutes, which I find always very interesting, and I find reference that JEDO funds paid for financial audits, but I have yet to hear from any of the JEDO members where these funds are, how much they are, and who is accountable for these funds. Until we see changes within Go Topeka, and I'm really not sure that's even possible, at this time, I see no reason to spend money on an economic development consultant. But if I were, I would definitely give it to the second presenter. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marple. The next speaker is Jim Lord.
Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Councilman, Commissioners, thank you for having this open forum this evening where people can comment. You know, from what I hear and listening to these two presenters this evening, the second one, I think really sends a loud message, that same message that I heard a few months ago as I was out campaigning. The system's broke. People don't trust how business is being conducted. We've got to change. Now, we can't change that by sending a few emails to people or having a television station for them to watch. We've got to promote the living daylights out of it. We've got to involve the public. If we can involve the public on all levels, not just a few levels, then I think we can move forward and move this city forward. That's what we all want. We want to be the capital city, not the city that's dragging behind. And when you look at the stats this evening, we know that our wages are behind. We know that we have vacant buildings here and there. We've got to change the way we do business. And I think that starts with hiring a new consultant. I think we need one, and we need to listen to them. And we need to make changes in how we deal with Go Topeka, get a fence between the different organizations. We can't have it all run by one or a few. So that's my comment, and I appreciate your time this evening. I would encourage you to vote for the second presenter, the Gardner. I think they have their handle on what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. That concludes our public comment. Board members, is there other discussion? We have a motion before us. Councilman Shum?
It is my thought, after listening to both presentations, that if we hire Avalanche, we will feel better about ourselves at the end of the process. It is my concern that if we hire Garner, we will feel worse about ourselves. The question before the board is which would be more productive for us, to feel worse about ourselves and know more areas to improve, or to feel better about ourselves because someone hasn't dug as deeply into our city and into our organization. I leave that up for your decisions.
Thank you. Councilman Jensen?
Thank you. My recommendation would be Avalanche. After listening to both presentations, I appreciate Garner's approach. However, I do not think that it gets at the fundamental issues in our community. We can import jobs and businesses, but if we don't have some of the things at the very bottom level of our community fixed, they're going to do like so many of our young folks are today, get up and fly away. So I would encourage us to look at a different part of our community in terms of what we need to do to lay better foundations for our future business opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Commissioner
I think
Bueller.
my position on supporting Avalanche is this. I mean, along with the comments that Councilwoman Hiller mentioned from last time, but I only have to go to the second page, and I appreciate both opportunities for these people to do business in our community, but Garner Economics provides creative, strategic, and executable value to companies, communities, and organizations globally. On the other hand, Avalanche Consulting is deeply driven to make a positive impact and seeks clients who are equally inspired to energize their economies. We have as much of a stake in this, and those two sentences just say a lot to me. So,
Thank you.
and I challenge anybody who can say that word.
Councilwoman Claire?
I too thought both presentations were very well done. My only concern is whoever you choose, that we actually do what they suggest that we do, and we monitor that it gets done. That is just my own concern.
Thank you. I do have the written note from Councilman Harmon that, in saying that he would not be here due to business. And his was based on the, reading the proposal, since he is not here tonight. But he said based on that, his vote would be for Garner. So for that, what that is worth in our discussion. Is there other comments? Commissioner Bueller, Commissioner Archer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I got the commissioner right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I was talking to people in the audience when we were on break, and they indicated that either way we went, we were going to win, because we need this analysis. We need this evaluation, and Councilwoman Clear is exactly right. When we go down this path, we are making a pledge or a commitment to honor the recommendations and implement them as best we can. With all due respect to Commissioner Cook, on my way here and previously, I thought Garner had a little bit of an edge also. Again, it was after the presentations, and I put a lot of faith in cities that are world-class, that are benchmarks, and Avalanche has worked with Charleston, South Carolina, moved me over the edge. That's all I've got to say about that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
with all due respect to Commissioner Archer, I had it a little bit the other way around with my vote going into this with Avalanche, but having heard the presentation from Garner, that swayed my vote with the presentation. Primarily when we look at the economics of what we're asking for. We were sending out the RFP to have us look at how do we function as a body? Not as an indictment, not as a praise for Go to Pica, but this had really more to do with JEDO. How do we, as a city and a council, commissioners, relate to getting out our economic message? How do we incentivize companies to come here? How do we incentivize companies to stay here? And I think that the information provided by Garner encompassed the heart of the RFP and what we were looking for. That's not to say that I like the information that Garner had to offer. The showing the failures of JEDO, those are sometimes a hard thing to accept. Sometimes the reality is hard to accept. And I think those are where we need to reassess what is it that we are doing and how can we do it better.
I would comment that same as has been said, I think we have two outstanding companies, and as we know from our vote the last time we met, they were all practically tied. We're hard to decide which got more votes when we had a priority system. I base my thoughts on the plan that was presented by Garner that I felt had it very well tooled to the issues that we are facing, stating what the problem was, how it can be addressed, and what that hopeful than how the implementation process was. I thought that was very clearly spelled out, and it was very specific for the city of Topeka and Shawnee County. And I feel that that's more of the tool that's so important on how this will be done. And so for that basis, I support Garner. Councilman Jensen.
One more comment. I would add that Visit Topeka has been spearheading a community branding process, and that's been going on for at least a year, if not a bit longer. We've already started a big chunk of that, so I guess I'm not understanding why Garner felt the need to do that again or start the process over.
All right, any other comments? We have a motion before us, a substitute motion, that we negotiate an agreement with Avalanche. All those in favor of the voting members, please raise your right hand.
Mayor, excuse me, could we do a roll call vote?
Okay, we should do, all right, we will do a roll call vote.
Mayor Wolgast?
No.
Deputy Mayor Hiller?
Yes.
Councilmember De La Isla?
No.
Councilmember Cohen?
No.
Commissioner Bueller? Yes. Commissioner Cook?
No.
Commissioner Archer?
Yes.
We have three.
We have,
Yes.
actually, I would say 4 having voted no, the motion is defeated. So we would be on the original motion, which would be to negotiate a contract with Garner. All right, and if there's no discussion, we will proceed with the vote.
Mayor Wolgast?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hiller?
Yes.
Councilmember De La Isla?
Yes.
Councilmember Cohen?
Yes.
Commissioner Bueller?
No.
Commissioner Cook?
Yes.
And Commissioner Archer?
Yes.
Six.
6 having voted yes, then that motion carries. And I think it also speaks to the closeness because of the vote. The first vote was extremely close. We certainly, again, want to acknowledge both entities, and we appreciate where we are and where we will be going with it. Thank you very much for being a part of this. That concludes agenda item 4. We can, if there will be some people leaving, we can take just a minute. If not, we will quickly move on. Okay, agenda item 5 is the approval of the Go Topeka 2014 financial statement and auditor's report. Actually, I went to call on the deputy city attorney it's somewhat stated, we actually do not approve the Go Topeka audit. By the interlocal agreement, we require Go Topeka to have an audit, and so we receive it tonight. But it's stated that we will take action, so we will. And I've asked the deputy city attorney to just speak to that, so we're clear on how that's to be handled.
Yes, the JEDO's agreement with Go Topeka requires Go Topeka to have an annual audit done by a CPA selected by JEDO every year. And so this is the time when they're going to present that audit. So the appropriate motion would be a motion to accept the audit after it's presented.
All right, thank you. And again, we've done this in this meeting, which is the second quarterly meeting, the audit presentation for 2014. And Mr. Glenn, would you come forward and to handle this? Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And council members, or excuse me, board members, you have a copy there in your packet.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Doug Glenn. I'm a shareholder in the Topeka office here of Mayor Hoffman McKeon. and we are auditors for Go Topeka. And what we'd like to do this evening is just go through the audit, and the financial statements and the audit opinion with you, go through some of the significant items in the financial statements, and then some of the footnotes, not all, but some that are more significant. And then, of course, stand for any questions you might have. So we'll start with that. So starting with that, on page 1, of course, is really the only part of this document that's really our work product, and that's our audit opinion. And again, it's an independent auditor's report. It's addressed to the board of directors of Go Topeka. It's a standard, it's an unmodified, a clean opinion. Starts out giving you a synopsis of what management is responsible for. Management of Go Topeka is responsible for the preparation of the financial statements. Our responsibility as auditors is to express an opinion. Auditors use judgment. Auditors obtain audit evidence. We consider things like internal control, the presentation of the financials, footnotes, appropriateness of any accounting policies, etc. We obtain sufficient audit evidence to render our opinion, and in the last paragraph you'll see our audit opinion does say it's a clean opinion that these financial statements are prepared and are fairly stated in all material respects. Page 2, I'll hit some of the more significant items on the comparative statements of financial position. As you will see, and again, I might start by pointing out that if you're getting interim financials, they're probably most likely maybe on more of a modified cash or cash basis. This is on a full accrual, a GAAP basis, generally accepted accounting principles. So you'll see things like deferrals and things of that nature. I want to point out that cash and cash equivalents and investments have increased, and that's the reason for that is if you look at the first item on the liability side, deferred grant revenue jumped up from $5.9 million to $8.3 million. And what deferred grant revenue is basically the sales tax revenue through the sales tax that has yet to be spent. On full accrual, as you're aware, sales tax is collected at $5 million, but if it's not spent, it's deferred, so it's a liability. So that's why we have more cash and investments included in the cash of $7.5 million. There's about $6 million of sales tax dollars, and all the investments that are $2.1 million are sales tax dollars held for future business development, economic development. One item, again, on the current asset side I want to point out is the restricted funds, and that's the escrows that primarily at 2014 is the Mars escrow, and prior year was Mars and the Air Service grant, and so that's about $2.3 million. The last item in the other assets, land held for economic development, again, to reacquaint you with that, that's the value on the books of the two amount of land that's still held by Go Topeka at the two industrial parks. Talked about deferred grant revenue, again, $8.3 million. Again, that's sales tax money that is yet to be spent. There is a liability, the last current liability in the list of the improvement in trainings incentives. These are incentives that have been earned and have yet to be paid, again, primarily to Mars. So our net assets, approximately $11.6 million. Temporarily restricted piece of that, which may be new in the last year or two, Go Topeka has done a campaign on the private side, getting pledges, and to the extent they've got uncollected pledges, that's temporarily restricted. Everything else is either private dollars that are undesignated or board designated, which is primarily the land. So that's the balance sheet, the statements of financial position. Next page is a comparative statements of activity. And again, first item in both years is the JEDO grant revenue. Again, because it's on the full accrual basis, you won't see the whole $5 million. You see what has been earned, and it's earned as it's spent. So $2.5 million was earned. The one item you will see is $1 million that came in through the Air Service Grant. I believe that's from the state of Kansas. So that was earned, but it was also spent in the current year, and it's down under economic development. Nonprofit organizations such as Go Topeka required to present their expenses in terms of what are the program expenses versus what are general administrative and fundraising. You can see that economic development is $3.4 million, and supporting expenses are about $250,000 roughly. So total change in net assets about $127,000 for the year. Next page, page 4, cash flow. Won't spend too much time on that, but again, this is more on a cash basis. You can see the first line item, contributions, grants, and other support. There is where you would see the gross amount of cash would come in, which would include the $5 million of sales tax, plus the $1 million of the Air Service Grant, plus other monies that would come in both on the private side and other monies. So cash provided by operating activities is about $2.2 million. So our increase in cash, again, we have the increase in cash because we received it, but we haven't spent it. It's being held as a liability, so that's why we have an increase in cash. In terms of the footnotes, the notes to the financial statements, I won't talk about all of them, but if you would go please to page 9, footnote number 7. I mentioned earlier about on the balance sheet, the escrow funds, the restricted funds, and this is an analysis of the incentives that are in restricted cash. In the prior year, there was Air Service Grant and Mars incentives, and at the end of the year, what's left in escrow is basically what's left in that escrow to be paid to Mars. Footnote 9, page 10, related party transactions. This is one that is always in there so that you get an understanding of, remember, all employees of Go Topeka are actually employees of the chamber. So this footnote details how much is reimbursed from Go Topeka to the chamber because the chamber is actually their employer. Both in amounts that are funded by the JEDO grant and amounts that are funded by the private side. So those are amounts there, but that's the related party transactions. Go Topeka also pays its proportionate share of any lease agreement in the office space. And the organization did make, as you see there in the last paragraph, a contribution to 712 Innovations during the current year, and that would be also included under their economic development expense. Footnote 10, JEDO grant. JEDO did approve the carryover. Again, those are deferred amounts to carry over, and it does say that in there, the second paragraph. That's always done each year to allow Go Topeka to continue to hold those funds until they're spent. Footnote 13 on page 11. Discussion of the employment incentives. The first set of numbers there are amounts that are contingent on various employers meeting employment thresholds, benchmarks, and so those are not booked as a liability, but they're potential to be paid. At the bottom of the page is actually what is as a liability that's been earned. And primarily, again, it's funds held in escrow for Mars, less an amount that they haven't earned just yet. So that $1.5 million on the balance sheet is an amount that is committed and needs to be paid. It just has not been paid yet. I believe that's really all the significant items on the financials and the footnotes. So I would stand for any questions regarding the financials or our audit procedures.
Are there questions for Mr. Glenn?
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Cook.
Mr. Glenn, if we look at footnote number 5, pledges receivable, page 9.
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure that I highlight this where we talk about this for a moment. This would be what we commonly call the private funds for Go Topeka.
Yes.
And if we look at the statement of cash flows on page 4, It's closer to the end of the page, under change in. I just want to make sure that I understand, is the $771,606 the actual amount that was received in that fund during 2014, and $419,991 is what was actually received in 2013?
Yes, I believe, because the pledges receivable, again, that's those private donations that were put on the books, different companies, individuals made those pledges, and when the change, and that would be, yes, Commissioner, that's what was received from the private campaign that Go Topeka has done, so yes, that's true.
And so if Go Topeka was to come forward and indicate that there are individuals that are paid from private dollars, this is where we would see that private dollars so indicated on their audit.
Yes, and in addition to other dollars that have been accumulated through other means, but this is specific to these long-term pledges that they solicited and got. So this plus other donations and other monies that they receive from the private sector.
All right,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Anyone? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
If we could have a motion now, and then we will have the public comment. It would be and we won't vote, we'll have a motion, if that's appropriate. Wish to make that we accept the audit as presented.
So moved.
Commissioner Archer moves and Deputy Mayor Hiller seconds. We'll now have public comment. The first person to speak is Joseph Ledbetter.
I'm waiting my right. I didn't get to see the audit ahead of time, so I'm going to comment.
All right, thank you. Mr. Keith Warda.
I have no comments, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. That completes the public comment. So we have a motion before us to accept the statement and auditor's report. We'll do a show of hands if this is generally unanimous. If not, we will have a roll call vote. All those in favor of the vote of accepting the audit, please raise your right hand. Voting members. Okay, it is a unanimous vote for approval. We go to item 6, an update on the 2015 Go Topeka first quarter report. Be Mr. Scott Smathers. And if I know there's a copy in your packet. This was posted, I believe, in early April. We received this after the first quarter. And if you would like to give us a brief presentation on it.
Sure, appreciate that. I'm Scott Smathers, I'm with Go Topeka, and I'm just going to kind of go ahead and get started if I can figure out which one I want to punch here, so hopefully I'll get going. Basically, as you heard earlier, there's three primary areas that economic handles, and one is existing business, one is new business, which is the hunters, as we talked about, and one is the small business, which in our case is the EMBD group, the Entrepreneurial Minority Business Development Group. We actually have a fourth leg we put on this as well, and that is the workforce development. So we add another section into that, which we really just started last year as far as trying to expand, and so that is an area that we've tried to make good on. And as was described to you earlier, you have the existing businesses, they create a lot of jobs, they're really your key to keeping the market going and maintaining those relationships. And right off the bat, I have blown the first part. I should have introduced Barbara Stapleton is our new existing business person. Barbara started with us in March. She's lived in Topeka about 18 years. She's worked for the state, knows our state programs very well, has a lot of contacts in the market, and has hit the ground running. So we welcome her and appreciate her joining us. So you have the existing business, which we talked about. Then you have the workforce development. And one of the big benefits of workforce development from our perspective is that, and you don't want to say it's making the workforce stronger and it's improving the people in our market. So workforce development is a key aspect that we would like to continue trying to pursue and expand, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. New business is the hunters that we talked about, trying to bring in new businesses. One of the things they do create the biggest splash, for sure. As we talked about, the existing business probably brings in more jobs, but the new business creates the splash. And the splash is both internal, within the market, building up people's perspective, but also external, as far as site consultants see it and everything like that. So as you bring in more companies, site consultants take notice of that and realize there's something in your market that is making a difference. And then the small business is an area, once again, that we've really been trying to expand on in the last year and a half, and has been a big push for us. You know, it's advantageous in a lot of ways. You have people of all ages, all ethnicities, everything in regards to small businesses, so it's great, it's very diverse. We have, you know, continuous development, you're always working with small businesses, and then of course it's unique shops. It provides the uniqueness of the market, which is really important in your market, rather than why we love a lot of the national chains by all means. The uniqueness of the smaller shops is also very important to us. It is a area as well that we're always working with people, and you know, I don't know a very good way of putting this, but one of the things with small businesses, it's not always the new businesses that you help get started, but in a lot of times it's maybe helping people understand that maybe they're not quite ready to start a new business. For instance, I've had people come into my office before and say, I want to start a new business. What do you want to be? I want to be a restaurateur because I like to eat. And if you're familiar with restaurants, it takes a lot more. I mean, I like to eat, I'm going to tell you, but I would be a terrible person running a restaurant. So it's one of those things that you really, you know, a lot of times what you're doing is maybe telling them you need to do a little more research, maybe a business plan and things of that nature to help them get started. So having said that, let's talk about the existing businesses as a starting point. The existing business, first thing, Big Hearts contract was complete. They have signed it. There were no changes based off of what we had. And so they are moving forward with that project. As a reminder, that was, I believe it was 8 to 12 new jobs, 20 retained, and up to $42 million investment. So that happened the last quarter. We currently have about 9 projects in the works. Our projects, though, aren't always dealing with just incentives or expansions. A lot of times it's that businesses will come in and say, I want help, I need to talk to the state, I need help with state incentives, I need you to work with us on getting that going. And so we'll work with them. We have a lot of our bigger industries that often won't come and actually take our incentives, but want us to help them getting state incentives, because they don't want to be perceived, as one person put it, I don't want to be perceived as feeding from the trough too much. So they come in and we work with them, and obviously we offer them our incentives, but not everybody wants to take them, and it depends on their organization and how they are. We are doing the audits. Barbara's come in. I will tell you, we had fallen a little behind on that. We've got about 10 that 4 have been done, 6 are in process, so we're getting caught up rapidly, and that is really checking on the incentives that we already have given, and then making sure that the companies are living up to the process. So we had fallen a couple months behind with the loss of Joe, and now we're gaining, and we'll have more audits coming on board as the process continues and goes forward. And then we are still working on the Financial Services Summit, and that is planned right now for September 23rd, and we had a meeting actually on it today, and we'll have another one next week, and we're going to get it cranked, and more will be coming out in the press, and also just to individuals, so you can reserve the dates and everything as we go forward. So those are things that we're doing with existing business. Workforce development, I hope you all received a copy of the letter or a little note that we got from a young lady who received one of the scholarships. Hopefully it all went through on your emails. You know, so far they've given a total of 60 to 61 people. They've given about 33. It's up to about 40 now where they're at. They've got, you know, 70% of the scholarship recipients are economically disadvantaged, which means they're within 150% of the poverty rate that are getting the scholarships. And as you can see, you really can get scholarships across the board. As far as what they're offering. So they are very useful. It's been a very popular thing, and what's been interesting is I think it's actually encouraged others to start offering some scholarships at Washburn Tech as well, which is a great institute, because you remember you've got over 60% of the people do not have a college education. So they need the technical training, they need advanced training, and so this is another method for them, and that's what we're trying to encourage. We've given the manufacturers in the classroom a new look. It will start in September. The MTech program has now been added to, I think they've turned it into a certified production tech position as well. And the high school students are going to be allowed to now participate in that. As you know, in our state, high school juniors and seniors can go to technical colleges for free. And their classes are paid for, and so when they actually leave high school, they could already have their CPT certification, which would allow them or give them an edge on getting into a business with that experience. And then we are still working on a few other programs. I mean, we're working with the industries and the businesses and the educators, combining them all, and we started a BNSF program working with Washburn Tech on that, and we've actually expanded what we're trying to do with the veterans right now and are looking at adding in both Washburn and Washburn Tech as part of that program, but we're in discussions on that. As far as new businesses go, there are a lot of projects that we have out there. You know, which ones are active kind of comes and goes depending on the site consultants and the companies as far as what's happening. This kind of gives you a quick breakdown of them. Most of the businesses that are looking in our area are manufacturing and distribution. It's not too surprising with our road network and rail network that we have that distribution would be one of the major things that we have in our industries or our area. A few other things, just to give you an idea, the site requests for those businesses range anywhere from 20 acres to 200 acres. We actually have 2 proposals that have come in for over 200 acres, which would pretty much take all of our Cons of Fire second section, which is 236 acres. Projects often take about a year as you get going, and that doesn't really matter on the size, whether they're a small one or a big one, they take about a year. What's interesting in my experience in working with retailers, often they can also take a year as well. So as if we decide as an organization that you want to move forward that way, a lot of times retail takes a little while on coming in as well. They take a long while on their decision process, and they go through a lot of the same process that the companies do. We've had, some new proposals in the first quarter. We've already had 8 in the second. It really kind of ebbs and flows as far as how we get, as far as companies coming and having an interest. And then as far as marketing materials, we're already going with, we expect to be able to show you new marketing and web materials at the next board meeting. And we started an e-newsletter, which if you try to print it, probably wasn't the best, but it is good on the web as far as taking a look at it, and hopefully you were able to click on some of the links and see where we're trying to kind of keep people a little more informed about what's going on. That's, we're not guaranteeing it, but it pretty much comes out monthly to give you an idea about what's happening. This one is a little busy, but I need to, this is just March for small business. As you may or may not know, March is Small Business Week in the United States, and we turned it into 2 weeks, and then we turned it into 3 weeks. And Glenda's kind of been, Glenda, she's gonna, if it's 1 week, it's 3 weeks as far as where we're going. We had 11 cash mobs, you had multiple training sessions, you had 3 radio shows. It's been great. For those, we hope you're all attending the Small Business Award ceremony tomorrow. And there's more to come, as you can see going through. We would not be doing this justice, though, if we didn't stress that we've had a lot of partners. We've had the city, we've had SCORE, we've had the Small Business Development Center, we've had just a whole lot of partners coming in and participating in this, and we really appreciate everybody getting on board with this. It's been a lot of work, but for them, but it's also I think been a lot of fun for people, and we've had the young professionals involved and others as well. So it's kind of been a community-wide effort to try to expand it a little more. As far as this going, some other things that happened in the last quarter, and actually the first part, we did the doing business with Topeka schools, basically, and what that was is we pulled in. We contacted and reached out to as many small contractors as we could find through various organizations, and had them come in and actually listen to 501 as far as what do we have to do to be able to compete for your bond money, Or if they couldn't be, one of the primary contractors, how could they be a subcontractor out of it? So we worked on that to try to get them going. We've had some loans submitted. I actually attended the women's forum, and that was both a lot of fun, but it was really informative. Getting the information as far as the perception and the information as far as how it's a different angle of how things are looked at and the perception of what the women are in general, at least that we're speaking, were their understanding and how they perceived various things that occur. One of the things that really stuck with me is they said that some of them spoke and said, I'd be in meetings and I'd say something and the boss would be like, yeah, okay. And then the guy next to me would say the same thing and he'd say, that's a good idea, I like that. And after you hear that type of thing, and it was amazing the number of women who came back and said, that has happened to me as well. So it was kind of a eye-opening a little bit, and something then that you always keep in the back of your mind, so as you're in meetings, you start considering it a little more. There have been multiple events. We're always doing training events going on, trying to help people. The Breakfast Buzz with the social media, and I will tell you, I'm not your guy for that one, but the Breakfast Buzz with the social media was really interesting to hear how the businesses can use it and some ideas and stressing certain points of it. And then we launched 712. And 712 has over 70 members. You have about 27 people that are either doing business or trying to do business out of it. It's really growing and pretty dynamic. And if you haven't been there, we'd love to take you around and show you 712, because you really ought to see what's out there. It's a pretty neat concept. And I still haven't been trained on a lot of the tools, so I need to go and do that. And this is for fear of my life, Glenda will kill me if I don't do the marketing thing. We have on May 20th, we have another Breakfast Buzz. That's where we're going to be, once again, inviting small businesses. Everybody's invited, small businesses. If you want to do work with one of these 4 entities, they'll tell you how, what the process is and how you might be able to compete for that. They're doing focus groups with some of the minority segments. We have multiple training sessions, including financial services, where they're going to be teaching people how to develop and read financial reports. Both growth class, which is for existing businesses, as well as new venture classes, and then I will mention the annual EMBD conference that will be at the end of September. And there are many more things in October and November, but you'll get that at the next meeting. So I went through it, but
that was
good?
quick. That was a lot.
All right.
Are there questions? All right. Well, thank you. And I know for the newer members, this is when you first hear this, all the acronyms, you'll soon know what those are, and MTech, and we hope, but those of us who've been around, we know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
We're supposed to know.
Nice way to say it.
We're supposed to know what he's talking about. And thank you. Thank you for the presentation. The next item is an update on the JEDO first quarter financial statement. As Mr. Brandon Kaufman, the Chief Financial Officer for the city. The city handles it this year, in the odd years. And this is the financials on just the JEDO as the money comes in. You have a copy there in your packet.
Good evening, members of the board. You should have a copy in front of you of the first quarter financial statements. As of ending March 31st, 2015. We had total receipts of roughly 3.9 million for the first quarter. That includes sales tax collections that were up about 1.65% countywide. So we're seeing good news there over 2014 numbers. Total disbursements to date, and I'll go through. The city of Topeka had 3.7 million of disbursements. The biggest portion of that was for the Topeka Boulevard Bridge debt service payment. Shawnee County had total disbursements of about 1.8 million. And then Go Topeka had disbursements of about approximately 1.2 million for total disbursements of about 6.8 million. The bank balance as of January 1st, 2015 was approximately 5.9 million. With those disbursements, it's at March 1st, or sorry, let's say March 31st, it was approximately 2.9 million. With with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Are there questions? We can go into more detail, but at this point, yes, Councilman Shum.
Brandon, was that the final payment on the Topeka Boulevard Bridge or close to it?
Councilmember Shum, there's one more payment, so that'll end in 2016.
And the bridge was bonded when we passed absent sales tax, so it could be done immediately and with the idea, or then the process that we pay off, it'll be paid off when this absent sales tax is completed, correct? We make a payment and this is our bond payment
Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
on an annual basis. Okay, thank you. Any other, yeah, Councilman Jensen?
Are we gonna have a party now that we own the thing?
Burn the bridge. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. That completes our reports. If there's no other business before the board, we will then proceed to public comment, and the first person is Camille Miller. And we do have a number of comments, so we'll encourage you to keep it within the time frame. If you would, please.
Certainly.
Thank you.
I'm Camille Noy. I am president now of the League of Women Voters of Topeka, Shawnee County. And as I believe at least some of you know, our league is about halfway through a 2-year study of JEDO. And we are very pleased that JEDO intends to hire a consultant. It's chosen an excellent one this evening. Someone to review current practices and provide recommendations for JEDO going forward. We support the goals specified in the RFP and the stated focus items. We note that the RFP specifically stated that the consultant should identify strategies through all necessary means, including active solicitation of public input, reflective of our city and county. In keeping with this strategy, our study group is currently in the process of identifying recommendations which we would like to present to the consultant, recommendations we believe would enhance JEDO's economic development mission. We therefore would appreciate the opportunity to meet with the consultant at an appropriate time during the course of the consultant's work to provide input as a component of public input. Thank you. Under
Thank
4
you.
minutes?
Well done. Well done. Thank you for your comments. Next is Mr. Joseph Ledbetter.
JEDO members, thank you. First off, I want to commend you on your decision earlier tonight on getting this Gardner consultant. As long as he does what he says he'll do and he gets public input and then listens to public input and then brings that back to you with suggestions that will actually help this organization gain some trust from the public, if all that's done, then it will have been a good venture. If it's not, then it won't. I am continuing to be concerned about the lack of transparency of our contractor, however. And so tonight I'm going to pass in like one for the record and one to go around, please. This was a request I made 2 days after Doug Kinzer resigned for the minutes of Go Topeka from 2008 to the present. And then the response I got was on April 28th, of course, a couple days mail. And it was copied to Doug Kinziger, who'd already offered his resignation. And then in discussing it with Go Topeka, they told me that he hadn't been copied, and then another source told me, yes, he actually had been copied, and so I didn't get straight answers about that. But I also want to hand these out. I think I've got enough of that. Now, I sent email copies of this. This is a statement. This is minutes from Highcrest where Chad Sublette, our city attorney, said that Go Topeka is subject to Cora. And I showed that to him later. He said, yeah, I said that. That's fine. And he said, that's That's true. And so I have copied that in a complaint that I wrote earlier this week to the Attorney General, filing a court complaint on Go Topeka for not giving me those minutes on behalf of the Citizens for Accountability in Government. And I want to remind you on the record that Go Topeka, when they submitted an RFP last year, and you go back to the JEDO minutes, which are online conveniently, thank you, thanks to JEDO for doing that after encouragement. You will note that in their RFP, they said for that 3-year contract, we will be more than happy to submit to be under CORA. And that's how they filed it. And that's the zinger. That's contract, whether they like it or not. Not that they weren't subject to CORA before, they were. We continue this back and forth in this, well, we got some private money stuck here, and we got some of this and that. And, you know, when you commingle private with government money, it's all government. I mean, I guess they don't know the rules. But my organization and a lot of other people are really getting tired of it. We want transparency. You're not going to get the cooperation of this community to move economic development forward with this particular program unless, at a minimum, we have transparency of the records. And we don't know what that organization's doing unless we can look at the minutes. And based on all the vacant land they've got at their earlier site and their current site, which is about 600 acres vacant that I've counted, and I've gone back and looked at their statements, there's not much going on. So we want to know what they're doing with our money. And it's really that simple. And then we'll be happy to, you know, work with anybody that wants to be transparent and move this community forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next speaker is Tim Jarosky. I believe Mr. Jarosky has left. The next speaker is Keith Wardo.
I'll pass.
All right. The next speaker is Scott Griffith.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak with you for a few minutes. First, I'd like to commend you and thank all of you for taking the time that you took before tonight and then during the conversation as you evaluated two what I believe to be very competitive, thorough, and comprehensive proposals. I think both firms were very qualified, had fantastic credentials. In particular, I appreciated the non-voting members for weighing in and providing their input and their observations. I think that helped with the conversation. And I think it's also important that we had so many members of our community come up and offer their opinions. I think that was good for you to take into account as you made your decision. So thank you for the time that you took to do that. As a member of the Go Topeka board, I do look forward to the final results. I think talking to a couple of people even here tonight, after listening to the process that they're going to go through to come out with an end recommendation, I think there's going to be much that even we'll be able to learn from. And so we're looking forward to participating in that process as appropriate and when needed, and looking forward to the end result. I'd also like to share with you that as reported in our last meeting, the Chamber Executive Committee and the Go Topeka Executive Committee met last Friday as we had planned. Had a great conversation. We had a facilitator. We had an outside expert similar to the Garner and Avalanche folks here tonight that participated by phone that helped us with our conversation as we begin the process to step back, evaluate where we are, consider our organization, and decide how we want to proceed forward. From that meeting, and that was about a 3-hour meeting, we have broken up into 2 task forces, commingling our committee members. So we've got some Go Topeka members representing and chamber members on one task force and vice versa, to pursue gathering some additional information that we then, when we reconvene on June 3rd, we think we're going to be real close to setting the direction of where we want to go with our respective organizations. So we're putting our plan together. It's in motion. And if any of you have if any of you have questions, I would be happy to entertain those outside of tonight's meeting. So please give me a call. And with that, I'd like to thank you again for what you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments. Next is Lazone Grays. Mr. Grays?
If there are any additional copies needed, we can give copies to them afterwards. I know they would be online. I will give this copy to you at the clerk after I'm done. Sorry. I'm sorry, I don't have enough copies.
Okay.
Some of it is regurgitated information.
Were they two different?
This is the same information.
Oh, 'cause it's the same.
It's the same
Then I
information.
think we're okay.
Yes. I didn't know if there was enough. Members of the Joint Economic Development Organization, thank you for your time. I'll try to speak quickly. The first page is really, there's an intro, and I did want to identify some of the things that I see that have been accomplishments over the years. However, we got to that point, they are accomplishments. And as we move forward, I think that they are building blocks for whatever happens in the future. Regardless of what comes in the report, these are some things that are going to still be around, and I think that it's good that they are, because as I said, they can be built off of. And some recommendations for the JEDO, and that I will have spoken with members with the contractor about in the past. One of the other pages, this is something that I presented to the JEDO back in 2013. I just want to bring it up that from the report that the Heartland Visioning had did, these were some of the top things that were mentioned to the different focus groups that they had spoke to. Of course, my issue was always on the low-income, disadvantaged communities, and as you can see that regardless of the group, these were things that ranked high on the list. So I think that I'm hoping that people see that it's not just me saying this, that it is others as well. And I am very appreciative of the individuals who come and speak about my work even when I'm not here. I'm not paying anyone, but I am appreciative that people are acknowledging the efforts that I'm doing. Finally, on the Step Up Apprentice Training and Employment Program, when I speak to the training type of module for disadvantaged communities or disadvantaged persons, this is really part of the model that I've always brought into the mix. As you can see, and it almost may answer some of Councilman Jensen's question the other night, as far as public funds paying for some of these things. This is a recognized process or strategy by HUD, and it is laced with the word economic development. It is sort of a proven, not a proven method of programming that brings low-income, disadvantaged persons into training that can lead to jobs that are within their community. And I was actually speaking with Ms. Franny Woods today, who's the regional director of HUD, who is going to be coming to town, if I can work with the contractor, to really explain more about the Step Up program, apprenticeships, and how that can work to address some of the things that I have been speaking with over the years. Really about, again, leveraging funds and technical assistance. Finally, more importantly, I do want to express my appreciation. I have met with Mr. Smathers, Curtis Sneathen, Ms. Stapleton, of course, Mrs. Washington, and I'm very optimistic about the work that can be done. Now, I know I'm not going to have time, but this is very important. As you know, there are welfare reform policies that will go into effect on July 1st. Your report won't be in until September. That means that there may be more people coming into and being low income before that report comes in. So it's not really time to sit back on our laurels. The contractor, the JEDO, and other people still have things to do to try to deal with this uncertainty that's going to come down the pike. Well, I'm just going to end it there because I see that there's only 8 seconds to go. But I will be meeting with Mr. Smathers and Mr. Sneathen, and I look forward to doing some positive things moving forward, even before September.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you for your time.
The next speaker is Carol Marple.
I'm going to start out with a question. Joe
Could you-
Ledbetter.
Kara, I'm sorry, move to your right.
Oh, gosh, I forget, sorry.
Thank you.
Joe Ledbetter and I had a meeting with the Scotts, Scott Smathers and Scott Griffin. And if I misunderstood, I would really like one of them to correct me. But they stated that the chamber had a contract with Mr. Kinzinger, that Go Topeka did not have a contract with him. So my question is, does the chamber ratify Go Topeka's key decisions? And if so, what part do they play in this JEDO Go Topeka relationship? And then why is the chamber involved with the Go Topeka and the JEDO activities? That's a question, so maybe sometime somebody will answer it. I also wanted to state that I have started a project that I feel is long overdue. I am beginning to research how many of the Go Topeka private investors have been receiving money from Go Topeka. As I stated earlier, the past JEDO minutes can be very interesting. I have included a list in this packet that I handed out of the latest list that I could find of Go Topeka private investors. And I want to just mention a short list of businesses that I put together rather quickly who have benefited from Go Topeka. I'm not going to take the time to list out owners or CEOs of these businesses, or if they have or have had positions on the governing board of Go Topeka, because I only have 4 minutes, and most of you already know who they are. I'm going to start with the banks where Go Topeka has funds. We have Core First, U.S. Bank, Fidelity Bank, and Intertrust Bank. I received this information from Core Request and Scott Griffin. Most of this has been Core requests, or I've included some of the service agreement and the current allocation. But Kaufman, DeFries and Northern Law Firm, Hills Pet Nutrition, Bartlett and West, Creative Business Solutions, Dynamic Computer, Jayhawk File Express, Meisenhower and Company. They've all worked for Go Topeka. One I found particularly interesting was the CBIZ MHM LLC, David Pepper. He signs the 990s, so I assume he prepares it. Meyer, Hoffman, and McCain just did the audit that we heard about, and I found it interesting that Mr. Pepper and Mr. Glenn are listed as shareholders as Meyer, Hoffman, and McCain. The taxpayers of this county need, and we deserve, accountability of how our taxpayer dollars are being spent. From what I've been able to find, and I'm still going to keep looking, it appears that only a select group of businesses are benefiting from the economic development program in this county. We demand full disclosure of how our taxpayer dollars are being spent. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. That concludes the public comments for this evening. Board members, I am hopeful that we can have a contract for your approval and if all would go well, we would meet 2 weeks from tonight. If that does not work for you, please let me know. I would assume it could be a very short meeting, whatever time that we would take to make the approval, and then it would be posted the 5 working days prior to, which would be by next Wednesday, a week from today. So that's sort of the where we see this going in the next period of time. Seeing if there's no other business, the meeting is adjourned.
I had one more question to ask. If we're done, we're done.